Deborah Voigt's reviews for her performance in Ariadne auf Naxos at the Royal Opera House have been generally stunning, and there have been no comments about any changes in her voice. Voigt's marvellous instrument has not shrunk, as some feared, with her waistline, said The Observer. It was Deborah, you remember, who was sacked from the role 4 years ago because she couldn't fit into the little black dress she was expected to wear on stage. Well, she's since had gastric surgery and has lost some 8.5 stone. Deborah, what did you go through when you were dismissed in 2004?
Well, it was pretty upsetting, as you can well imagine. I had sung at the Royal Opera House on 2 prior occasions, and so was very much looking forward to coming back. I received a phone call saying that the production was really not appropriate for me. And of course I was disappointed and not just a little bit angry, but have gone through a lot of changes in my life, as you mentioned, with weight loss, and am back, and I think it sort of brings me full circle to come back in the same production that I was fired from those years ago.
What made you want to come back, though? You must have been cross with them.
Well, this decision was made by relatively few people, the director primarily, and for me to decide that I was not going to sing in Great Britain or at your major opera house because of the decision made by a few people was really kind of foolish. I've sung here on many occasions at the proms and Barbican doing recitals, so I knew I had a public that enjoyed seeing me perform. So I thought, well, it's time, and I'm an international opera singer, and so singing here is part of that package.
You did put a comic video on YouTube. What gave you that idea?
Well, I was sitting around with my publicist one day having a meeting and talking about coming back to the Royal Opera House, and I thought, wouldn't it be funny if I interviewed the little black dress? And it just sort of snowballed from there. We thought, well, let's do a little video for YouTube. And really it was a way to bring a little humor to the situation. The story has gone full circle. I'm ready to wrap it up. And I thought it was a good way to sort of put a little levity in the situation. Why
did you decide, though, that you would try to lose a lot of weight after they sacked you? Was it just the humiliation of that, or were there other reasons?
Really, it didn't have anything to do with that humiliating experience. I was not feeling well. I was having knee problems. I would sing a performance and have plenty of energy to get through it, but the next day feel completely depleted. And my quality of life was not what I wanted it to be, and I knew it was just a matter of time before there would be problems with heart disease or diabetes. And I had tried many, many diets throughout my life, gone up and down the scale, and I thought it was time for a really drastic measure.
And how drastic has it been?
Well, it's changed my life. There's no question about it. My health is considerably better than it was. I enjoy my life much more. I feel it's a fuller sort of existence. I am freer on stage than I had been. Getting down on the floor and having to get up again was difficult when I was carrying around all that extra weight. And I think that I'm more viable more believable in some of the roles that I sing now than I ever would have been at the prior size.
But you see, that's the great question, isn't it? I mean, we used to go to opera, and it really didn't matter what either the man or the woman looked like, as long as they had that fabulous voice. I mean, we just heard yours, and frankly, it gives me goosebumps every time
Thank you.
I hear it. Did that not concern you, that somehow the whole concept of opera was shifting?
Well, of course it concerns me, but I'm seeing the whole concept of opera shifting anyway. It's becoming much more media-oriented. The Metropolitan Opera, for example, is now broadcasting performances live into movie theaters across the country, and I believe some theaters here in Europe as well. And it would be just foolish to think that singers don't have to change along with that field. Opera is competing with sports and lots of other genres of entertainment, and it has to change along with that. And that means that singers have to be more viable visually than they were. That being said, I think the most fabulous voices that come down are going to be on stage, regardless of what they look like.
What effect has it had on your voice? Are you conscious of any change?
I'm really not. In terms of what the audience hears, I leave that up to them to discuss and argue amongst themselves, and they sure do. But
the critics have said there's no difference.
Well,
to
that's
voice.
as I say, I can't see it. I can feel differences, and certainly I have to think about the way I sing much more from a technical perspective than I did before. I would take a big breath, and my abdominal muscles, which support our voices, would automatically be engaged because there was so much weight there. Now I have to think about it a little bit more, and thankfully I've always had a good technique for singing, and that has carried me through this transition.
What about the surgery itself? Because when we were talking before we came on the air, I assumed you'd had a gastric band. We've heard a lot about gastric bands recently because various people in this country have had them done. Yours was slightly more radical surgery than the gastric band, wasn't it?
I had gastric bypass, which is permanent. And the reason I did that is that a lot of people experience reflux, which is basically terrible indigestion, when they have the lap band, as we call it in the United States. And for a singer, that's deadly because it basically burns your vocal cords. And so my doctor and I determined that for me it was really best to have the bypass.
And how serious an operation was that? It's
a very serious operation. It's not something to be taken lightly. It's not something to do because you're sacked for whatever reason from whatever job. It is very dangerous, but so is remaining extremely obese for most of your life. And I'm asked often by young singers who have weight issues, should I do it, shouldn't I do it? And it's something that I just absolutely don't comment on. That's something that you have to determine with your family, with your doctor, and then give it a lot of consideration.
You said you'd done lots of diets in the past, and I think some people say, oh, well, if these people were just a little more controlled and had a little more self-discipline, they wouldn't need this surgery. How do you respond to that sort of criticism?
Well, it would be, in an ideal world, of course, that would be the way to do it, but I think that one has to look at someone who's carrying around that much weight as having an addiction, just like anything else, to food, to alcohol, to drugs, and it's very simplistic to think that, oh, well, if you just change your eating patterns, if you just put down that drink, if you would stop doing those drugs, your life is going to change. Yes, of course it would, but sometimes it requires greater, more drastic measures, and certainly for me, that was the case. I will always have an issue with food. I will always have to pay attention to it. That's not going to change. The gastric surgery is merely a tool by which you can get a lot of weight off very quickly.
You've just had some rave reviews for Wagner's Isolde, and I know you're planning a Bruenhilde shortly.
I am.
How drawn are you to these heavier operas?
Well, they suit me vocally, and that's, of course, the number one reason. But the characters are so rich, and I'm finding that as I go further into my career, if the character doesn't really ignite a fire in me, I don't enjoy singing it, and I don't sing it well. So I'm very lucky that I have the vocal resources to sing these heroines of Wagner and some of the Strauss roles that I do as well.
You've also been singing Broadway tunes. How do you nurture a voice for Broadway tunes and Wagner?
Well, really, it's pretty much the same sort of thing. You look at the words and you maybe make your voice a little bit leaner, lighter for some of the Broadway cabaret things that I do, but being able to do that makes what I do in Wagner more interesting as well. There's a lot of lyricism in Wagner. People think of Wagner and they think, women in breastplates and horns and spears, and there's a certain amount of that, and you do have to sing over a 70-piece plus orchestra. But there are also very tender moments of lyricism, and being able to sing a Broadway tune lends itself well when you're in a very long Wagnerian evening.
Deborah Voigt, welcome back to London.
Thank you
For being with us.